Hello all, Nice Tale here, bringing you another knife review, and today we're going to be looking at this, the Kizer Begleiter 2. Quick overview, quick look at the knife before we get started into specs. You've got a Tanto here, with a hollow grind, it's black washed, thumb stud action only on this knife. You've got some of Kizer's very nice micarta, which is not only nice, but slightly contoured. This knife is a liner lock, running on bearings, with Kizer's excellent action, due to what you see in there, which I will explain once we get to that. And this knife is in 154 cm. It has a deep carry pocket clip that is reversible, and a lanyard hole, for those who care. Let's jump to specs right now. But before that, if you're still watching, care to like and subscribe, I greatly appreciate it. And comment down below, what are your thoughts on Kizer knives? So, specs. Blade length is just a hair under 3.5. I'm going to call that like 3.45. The overall length is 7 and 7/8, so maybe a hair under that, so 7.8 maybe. And then just a hair under 4 and 3/8 for the handle length, so 4.4. So yeah, about that adds up pretty well. I'm satisfied with that. There goes that. If you didn't hear that, something just fell. Comparisons today. For some reason, the Tanto Elementum and the Civivi Conspirator. As you can see, this knife does fall in between them. It is much closer to the Conspirator, but it is a bit shorter than that. The blade length is not a whole lot shorter, just a little bit, but it does actually have a little bit less handle, so the blade to handle ratio is actually pretty darn good on this thing. Profile for carry. Is not a tall knife. It's not taller than either of them. Even without the flipper tab, I think the Civivi is technically a little bit taller. Or the Elementum, I should say. Let's get this over there so we can compare thickness, because that is where this knife is a little bit more bulky. It is a little thicker than the Conspirator, as you can see. But pretty darn close to being very, very similar. And that's the contouring, so who cares, is what I want to say. Let's see how thick it is. 534 thousandths, a little over half an inch. 120 thousandths on the blade. Stock. And behind the edge. Let's see if I can get this. I'm reasonably comfortable to... hold on. Yeah, I'm reasonably comfortable to call it right there. We are pretty darn close to where it needs to be, right behind that edge bevel. And I'm going to call it around 13.5 to 14 thousandths behind the edge, which is pretty thin, especially considering this knife does not have a lot of room to drop. And that's the hollow grind I work. Hollow grinds are a great thing, people. Weight. 3.2 ounces. So this is a great ratio knife. You're getting more than an inch for every ounce of weight, which is pretty good. Hardware check. T8 on the pivot. T6 on everything else, unfortunately. They could have definitely done these in T8s, and I would have liked to see it. But I have had this knife apart, and it has not caused me any sort of problem. So do with that what you will, but these are T6s. I don't like it, but yeah, it is what it is. I'm going to have to say that with, like, every video, because, like, half the knives in my collection, probably about 75%, are T6s. Have them somewhere. So, it is what it is. Alright. Getting into a close look at the knife. Plunge grind is not really good. It ends at the edge termination. However, you can cut in a sharpening choil because of this doohickey right here. And I'm noticing that I really do like knives that have this little protrusion on the tang at the back end of it. Yes, of course, you can hit it when you're sharpening if you're not careful. If you're doing it on an angle, like a freehand, just be careful. Ideally. But what that little doohickey does is gets caught on your nail, so you're not getting guillotined. And it allows them to put the stop pin in a position where the doohickey, I'm just going to go with doohickey at this point, comes in contact with the stop pin instead of behind the edge, allowing you free access to this sharpening choil, which you will definitely have to expand once you sharpen this knife. Fortunately, due to the nature of the hollow grind, it doesn't get that much thicker that fast, even though it's such a short drop. So hopefully you might get a sharpening or two before you really have to go in there. You're going to have to go in there. As I said earlier, 154 cm with these thumb studs, which are quite comfortable. And the Tanto blade, before we move on to the handle, is both accessible for the tip, reasonably so, and for the secondary tip is also pretty usable here. And overall, I don't know why I like this sort of drop, this clipped Tanto look. I don't know why I like it, but I do. It's one of the things that caught my attention with this knife. Oh, I guess we should also talk about the one bad thing, and that's the branding. Kizer, you're doing too much. Take this. First of all, I don't really love when branding is on the grind of the blade. I prefer it to be on the flats. Take your logo, Kizer, make it a little smaller, put it right there. Get rid of the word Kizer. We don't need to see that. And back here, we don't need to see the name of the knife on the knife. And we certainly don't need to see the identification code. Just the AZO, which is the designer. Do that, wonderful. Kizer does a little bit more aggressive with some of their branding. It's not stopping me from liking the knife because it's not the most hideous thing, but there are some knives where it's overboard. Now, moving back to the handle, as I said, this is on bearings, and the reason for this amazing, amazing drop shot action is coming back to this cut head and the blade tang. What you're seeing there is the bearings, because Kizer's made a cut of weight reduction at the back end of the tang. So the blade is even more forward heavy, so it drops more readily. Of course, that only really works is if you have decent tolerances and decent bearings and just your execution is solid. It still has to be solid, but that's one of the main things that helps with that. And Kizer's doing that a lot on their knives now, and it's their action's pretty great because of it. So, there is a pivot collar on one side of this knife for some reason, this brass looking thing. I don't know why it's there. I don't particularly care for it, but it's not hurting anything, so it's there. Lockup is pretty solid here. Not too late, not early. There is no play in this knife. Left, down, upper, right. We are, in fact, centered here. You can see that one little screw peeking through. Backspacers, no backspacer, just standoffs, but that's fine. It's a budget knife. Lanyard hole for those who care. The screws under the pocket clip are flush and flat, which allow this to go in and out of the pocket pretty well. It does have a good amount of tension on the pocket clip, but it actually works pretty well. This thing's pretty easy to carry. It disappears in the pocket. It's just a small, easy carry. And this pocket clip's pretty good. It's got a mostly continuous rise, and I mean, it could be a little bit higher, but honestly, it's super comfortable in the hand. Speaking of ergos, they're great on this knife. Yes, you can feel the pocket clip a little bit. It is a deep carry pocket clip on a budget knife. You're going to feel it a little bit, but this is one of the better ones. I mean, honestly, this is super comfortable. I can't actually feel it in this sort of gorilla push grip. And in this grip, I can just barely feel it at the back end, and it feels natural, feels like part of the knife. It doesn't feel uncomfortable in the slightest, which is impressive considering just how trim this handle is. Maybe it's the contouring helping, I don't know, but it works. It works great. There is weight reduction in there, as you can see, which is what's helping getting that ounce an inch, despite having full steel liners. And the access to the lock bar is just, I mean, fantastic. Access for days with that safety little bit there. Honestly, this is a pretty simple one, but it's also a pretty great knife. This is a wonderful budget knife. It's honestly one of my favorite budget knives. And I think it was like $69. I only say that because they're constantly changing these things with the prices, and this one may have changed a bit because I believe it's discontinued. I know I got it on sale for less than that. I'm not 100% sure if it's discontinued, but I think it said it was when I bought it. It was definitely on sale. So even at full price, if this was $70, this is 100% worth it. 154 cm, this execution, yeah, this is a really, really good knife. And it's performed well. It's not the sharpest. It's sharp, and it cuts, especially with that geometry, but it could have been a little sharper out of the box. All around, there's not much other than that branding. There was one little hiccup with this knife, and I should mention it, even though it's never happened on any other knife, any other Kizer, or any other knife in general. And that is the detent ball. It apparently wasn't pressed hard enough into the liner, and it actually popped out on me. Fortunately, I was able to find it, and I pressed it back in and got like a little tiny vise and everything like that, and took the whole knife apart. It's come apart. It went back together just perfectly fine. And I pressed that detent ball back in. Haven't had a problem since. Still got a very snappy, pretty solid detent, honestly. I'm not sure you can fail this thing. No, you can, but you really have to cheat. It doesn't take much to get it to just completely deploy. Very solid detent. I suppose that can happen, though, on most knives, especially budget knives, but I don't think that's something you have to be on the lookout for. Just make sure it doesn't happen in your pocket or something like that, and it doesn't happen, then you put the knife in your pocket and it just decides to just, do that in your pocket. Don't let that happen. Other than that, even the jimping up here it's soft, but it does provide traction. This is a really good knife all around, and I definitely recommend this knife. So, if you stuck around, again, consider liking, subscribe, consider commenting. I'm destroying my mat. Watch as this mat becomes more and more damaged over time. And check out some of Kizer's line. That's all for me today, though. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.